There is a feeling most people spend their entire lives in without ever naming it. It is the feeling of almost. Almost there, almost ready, almost believing it enough, almost in the right state, almost manifesting, almost trusting the process. And the truth is that almost is its own assumption. Almost is a consciousness, and it creates almost results every single time. Because here is how reality actually works. Your life doesn't reflect what you want. It doesn't even reflect what you believe in the conscious, stated sense of the word. Your life reflects what you assume, what you take for granted as simply true. Not what you're hoping for, not what you're working toward, not what you're trying to believe, what you assume. And the moment you feel the difference between those two things in your body, the moment you feel what assumption actually is versus wishful thinking, wearing assumptions clothes, everything changes. That's chapter 3. That's today. I'm Anca. Welcome back to Lumina Liber. Season 1, The Power of Awareness, Chapter 3, The Power of Assumption. This is the one where everything becomes real. Let's go. If you are new here, welcome. Before you go any further, go back and watch episode 1 and 2. What we build today stands on what we laid in those episodes. If you're back, I'm so happy you're here. Something in you keeps saying yes to this work. That's not small. That's the assumption of someone who is ready. So go ahead and hit subscribe if you haven't. And let's begin. I want to speak to something before we open the book. Because I know where some of you are right now. You've done 2 weeks of this work. Something has shifted. You can feel it. The I am landed somewhere real. The idea that you are the dreamer, not the character, opens something new. And now, there is this other part. The part that says, okay, but what do I actually do with this? That part is not resistance. That part is intelligence. Because consciousness work without practice is just beautiful philosophy. And we are not interested in beautiful philosophy. We are interested in results, in actually living differently, in the law being proven through lived experience. So today is where it becomes a practice you can use from the moment you wake up tomorrow. And the practice is much simpler than you think. Not easy, simple. The difference between those two things is the whole teaching. Let's open the book to chapter 3. the power of assumption. Let me show you something. I want you to think of something you want, something you've been wanting for a while, a situation, a relationship, a version of your life, a feeling of being. Do you have it? Now, and be honest with yourself here. When you hold that desire, what is underneath it? Is it the feeling of having it? Or is it the feeling of wanting it? Because those are two completely different states, and only one of them is an assumption. Wanting is a consciousness of absence. I want X means I don't have X. And as long as wanting is the dominant state, as long as the reaching and the hoping and the working toward is what the nervous system is marinating in, the consciousness of absence is what is creating. Assumption is completely different. Assumption is what you take for granted. The things so true that you don't even think about them. You assume you'll wake up tomorrow. You don't hope for it. You don't visualize it. You don't affirm it. You just assume it. It is a given, built into the fabric of how you move through the day. You assume your name is your name. You don't remind yourself of it. You don't practice believing it. It is simply what's true, taken for granted without effort. That level of certainty, that matter-of-fact givenness, is what is the quality of your assumption about your desired reality. Not excitement, not hope, not the performed certainty of someone trying to believe. The quiet, settled, almost boring certainty of someone who simply knows. Now, here is where I need to make a distinction that most teachers of this material miss entirely. Because when people here assume it's true, they try to pretend it's true. They try to generate the feeling of having it. They white-knuckle their way into a positive state. They perform the assumption. And it doesn't work. And they conclude it doesn't work. But that's not assumption. That's effort wearing the mask of assumption. Real assumption doesn't require effort. Real assumption is effortless by definition, because effort implies doubt. The moment you're working hard to believe something, you are actually revealing that you don't assume it. So, how do you actually assume something? This is the part nobody talks about clearly enough. You don't start with a big thing, the thing so far from your current reality that the gap between where you are and where you want to be is so huge, the nervous system immediately signals danger. You start by finding the feeling first. the actual felt state in the body of someone who already has that. And you inhabit that feeling just for moments, just for seconds, often enough that the nervous system begins to recognize it as familiar. Because the nervous system doesn't assume things it's never felt. It assumes things it recognizes as safe, known, normal. So you're not trying to believe something impossible. You're training your nervous system to recognize a different state as normal, as simply given. That's the practice. And here is what you can do, because I know you need this to be practical. Every single morning, before you check your phone, yes, I said it, before you talk to anyone, before the day has a chance to remind you of what you are currently assuming, you spend 2 minutes in the body of the version of you who already lives from the desired assumption. Not thinking about it, being it. Feeling the breath of that person, the posture, the quality of ease in the body, the way that person moves through the world. 2 minutes every morning. That's the practice. Made somatic, made often, made something your nervous system can actually work with. And now I want to say something about what assumption is not. Because this is where intelligent people especially get stuck. Assumption is not denial. I'm not asking you to pretend your current situation doesn't exist. I'm not asking you to lie to yourself about where you are. I'm asking you to simply stop giving your current situation the authority to define what is possible. To stop letting the present facts determine the future assumption. Your current bank balance is a fact. That it will always be this way, that is an assumption. And it is one you can change. Your current relationship status is a fact. That love is not available to you, that's an assumption, not a fact. Your current health is a fact. That your body cannot change, cannot heal, cannot find a different way of being, that is an assumption, built over years and reinforced by evidence, but still an assumption. And assumptions can be changed, not by fighting the current one, but by inhabiting a new one so consistently, so below the level of thought that it becomes the new normal. That is the power of assumption. And that is what we're doing in the transmission today. I want to ask you something before we go into the transmission. What is the assumption? Not a wish, not a hope, the assumption you've been living from about the things you want most. What have you been taking for granted as simply true about that area of your life? Take a few seconds and actually feel for it. Because what you find now is exactly what we're going to work with in the transmission. And after, I want you to drop it in the comments. Not what you want, what you've been assuming. That kind of honesty creates the container for real change in you and in everyone else watching. I want to tell you about the assumption I didn't know I was making. For years, I mean years, I had a very clear picture of what I wanted my work in the world to look like. The people I wanted to reach, the depth of transformation I wanted to facilitate, the kind of guide I knew I was capable of being. And I was working toward it, hard and consistent. What I didn't see, couldn't see, until I start working at the somatic level with my own subconscious, was the assumption running underneath all that effort. The assumption was not, this won't happen. I wasn't pessimistic. I believed in my work. The assumption was, this is something I'm building toward. Something in the future. Something I'm working to earn. Something that will arrive when I've done enough, become enough, proven enough. The assumption was future tense. And future tense is the consciousness of not yet, of absence, of becoming without arriving. I was working hard inside an assumption of preparation. And my reality, beautifully, precisely, was reflecting that back. Always progressing, never landing. And the shift was not in my strategy. It wasn't in my effort. It was in the assumption. The day I stopped assuming I was building towards this life and starting the assumption that this is my life now already. I'm already the guide I'm preparing to become. Things began to move. Not all at once, but with a quality of being real that felt completely different from anything effort had ever produced. That is the power of assumption, not as a technique, as a shift in what you take for granted as true. I tell you this because I know exactly where some of you are, working hard inside an assumption you haven't examined yet. Today we look at it, and today we change it. Everything we talked about today has been building toward this moment, because the assumption doesn't change in the mind, it changes in the body. It changes when the nervous system actually feels what it means to already be there, already have it, already live from it, not as performance, as a felt reality. That's what we're going into now. This transmission is different from the last two. In episode 1 and 2, we dissolved and opened and expanded. Today, we land. We land in the specific felt reality of your desired assumption, held in the body, in the nervous system, at the level where it can actually begin to create. So, I need you here fully. Headphones in if you have them, if not, that's fine. Body settled and supported. And bring to mind, just loosely, just at the edges, the one thing you want most, the one assumption you've been living from that you're ready to change. Hold it lightly and let the eyes close. And just let yourself arrive fully now. Feel the weight of the body dropping into whatever is beneath you. And this time, let it drop a little more than usual, as if the body knows it can trust this moment completely. Let your breath slow. Just allow to find its own natural rhythm of someone who has nowhere to be except exactly here. And let your jaw release, your shoulders, the space between your eyebrows. Good. Now, I want to do something a little different today before we go anywhere. I want you to feel something that you probably feel so often that you've stopped noticing it. The feeling of wanting something. Not a specific thing right now, just the quality of the feeling itself. The reaching, the gap between here and there, a slight tension of not yet. You know the feeling, it lives somewhere in the chest usually, or the belly. A kind of forward lean, a reaching toward. And I'm wondering, where do you feel it? Just notice it. Without judgment, without changing it. Just feel what wanting actually feels like in the body. And now, very gently, I'm going to show you something different. Think of something you already have. Maybe your name, or the fact that you know how to read, the feel of your own hands. Notice the quality of that knowing. There is no reaching, no tension, no gap. It is simply given. Quiet, already true. And feel the difference between those two qualities. The reaching of wanting and the settled quiet of simply knowing. That settled quiet, that is assumption, and that is what we're building today. Bring to mind now the thing you've been wanting and hold it, but this time, instead of feeling the wanting of it, I want you to feel something different. Let it be true. Not performed, not forced. Just for these few minutes, let it be simply true. The way your name is true. The way the floor beneath you is true. Without effort, without justification, without needing anyone's permission. Notice what happens in the body when you stop reaching for it and simply have it. Something shifts, doesn't it? Something that was leaning forward begins to settle back. The chest softens. The belly releases something it's been holding. This is not pretending. This is assumption. The real thing. And now, I want to take you somewhere more specific. There is a version of you who already lives from this assumption, not in the future, existing right now, in the field of all possible consciousness. As a fully formed, fully alive, fully real version of you. And I want you to step into that version. Not watching them from a distance. Be them. Start with the body. How does that version of you breathe? Is it deeper, more spacious, without the constriction of not yet? Let your breath become that breath right now. How does that version of you sit? Is there a quality of ease, of someone who is not bracing for disappointment, who is not managing the gap between here and there, because there is no gap? Let your body find that posture. How does that version of you feel inside their chest? Not excited, not relieved. Something more quiet than both of those. Something that doesn't need to be named because it doesn't need to prove itself. Settled, arrived, already home. Let yourself be that version now. Not tomorrow, not when you've earned it. Now. And feel what this version of you takes for granted. The simple things that are true. They require no thought, no maintenance, no effort. Feel the assumption living in the body. Not as a decision, as a fact. And notice from inside this version of you how differently the world appears. Not because the world changed, because the consciousness you are now sees different things, notices different possibilities, and moves toward different doors. The same world seen through different eyes. And now, the deepest place. There is a feeling that comes when something is truly assumed, truly taken for granted as real. It is not excitement. Excitement still has the quality of surprise in it, of I can't believe this is happening. What I'm pointing at is something more quiet and more powerful than excitement. It's the feeling of course. Of course, this is my life. Of course, this is who I am. Of course, this is what's true. The feeling of someone who ordered something and is simply waiting for it to arrive. Not anxiously, not always checking, just knowing it's coming. Because they place the order and they trust the system. Feel that quality now in the body. The relaxation of course. Something releases in the belly when this lands. A grip you might not have known you were holding. The grip of someone who's been managing the outcome, trying to make it happen, checking to see if it's working. Let it go. Not the desire, the grip of the desire. The desire stays. The reaching releases. Because reaching says, I don't have it yet. And you, right now, in this body, in this consciousness, already have it. Rest here in the assumption that is simply true. In the body of the version of you who never doubted this. In the quiet, certain of course. This feeling right now, this is the work. This is the assumption held in the body, creating right now. And now it's time to begin to feel the room around you. The sounds, the breath, the body. And bring this back with you. Not as a memory of how it felt, as a new normal, as a given, a new assumption already operating. And take a breath that belongs to someone who already knows. And when you're ready, let your eyes open. Welcome back, or welcome certain. That settled feeling you just touched, that of course quality, that is what you're building. You felt it, which means your nervous system now has a reference point, and that changes everything. Here are your 2 practices for this week. The first, every morning before anything else, 2 minutes, eyes closed, body of the version of you who already lives from the desired assumption, not visualizing the outcome, being that person. Their breath, their posture, their quality of settled knowing. 2 minutes every single day. The second, when the current reality argues, when situations try to remind you of the old assumption, and they will, especially at first, don't fight them. Don't affirm over them. Just notice. This is the old dream. I'm dreaming a new one now. One sentence said quietly in the body, as a gentle reminder of consciousness. I need something from you today. Drop in the comments the assumption you're changing. Not what you want, what you're now assuming instead of wanting. Make it specific. Make it present tense. Make it the of course version. Of course I have. Of course I am. Of course this is my life. Write it right now in the comments. Because the moment you write it, something shifts. The assumption gets witnessed. It becomes slightly more real. That's not psychology, that's consciousness. And read what others write. You might find your own assumption in someone else's words. This is what community does. It makes their individual work feel held by something larger than one person doing it alone. If this episode is moving something real in you, please share it. For the person in your life who's been working hard inside an assumption that they haven't examined yet. One share could be the thing that shifts their entire life. And 2 things before I let you go. 1, the Lumina Awakening, my free somatic transmission audio that takes you into expanded awareness, the kind of state that makes assumption work without effort. It's at ancauni.com, link in the description. And 2, if these 3 episodes have shown you what's possible and you want to do this work with me directly in a private, fully personalized container, that's what my one-on-one work is. ancauni.com, apply to work together. And next week, chapter 4, Desire. Desire is not about wanting more. It's about understanding that your desire, the real one, the deep one underneath the surface wish, is actually pointing you towards something that already exists. Read chapter 4 before you come back, and I will see you there. Much love.